So it looks like we could have an update when it comes to EC3's future with Impact Wrestling after only returning to the promotion a couple of months ago. Now at Bound for Glory, EC3 and Moose went one-on-one in the latest cinematic match during this pandemic era of professional wrestling. Now the match, if you can call it that, wasn't your typical back and forth match, and EC3 seemed more concerned with helping Moose control his narrative and rediscover his aggressive side as opposed to actually winning the match. The match took place in an undisclosed location, and the match left both men bloodied and battered after 9 minutes, and the former NFL player, the current TNA World Heavyweight Champion, defeated EC3, I suppose, and retained the TNA World Heavyweight Championship in the process. Now, after Bound for Glory, Impact Wrestling held their latest TV tapings after the Bound for Glory weekend. It was actually took place on the Sunday and Monday over the Bound for Glory weekend. Now, the guys over there at Fightful, using their Patreon service, Fightful Select, be sure to check it out, have reported that EC3 was not present at the post-Bound for Glory tapings for Impact Wrestling because he and Moose filmed their content for the pay-per-view ahead of time. Now, it's been suggested that the former world champion EC3 could return to an Impact Wrestling ring at Turning Point on November 14 or at the next set of tapings on November 17 and 20, but that is still remain to be seen. However, EC3 in the meantime can be seen in Ring of Honor, where he continues to try to control his narrative. Now, he debuted with Ring of Honor a couple of weeks ago on ROH TV. Those TV tapings took place a couple of months ago, and he looks set to team with the Briscoes against Shane Taylor and SOS in recent episodes of Ring of Honor. Now, the reports are now coming out that EC3 not being present for the latest round of Impact tapings could mean that EC3's second stint with Impact may already be over. Now, it's worth noting that after the Moose vs EC3 match at Bound for Glory, and again, match if you want to call it that, after the match ended with Moose seemingly winning, EC3's motionless body was carried out of this undisclosed location by a gang of hooded figures that have been associated with EC3 ever since the former TNA World Heavyweight Champion returned to the promotion back during the summer at July at the Slammiversary pay-per-view. Now, should EC3 either continue his storyline with the reigning TNA World Heavyweight Champion Moose or begin an entirely new storyline arc, this seems like the best place to kick things off, that being maybe the Hard to Kill pay-per-view in January, or perhaps, as I mentioned, Turning Points later on this month. Now, I mentioned obviously EC3 at the meantime is with Ring of Honor. He's been teaming with the Briscoes to take on Shane Taylor and the Soldiers of Savagery. Now, this is just a very, very confusing situation when it comes to EC3 and Impact Wrestling, and this is something that I've touched on in previous videos when I've spoken about Bound for Glory, and I've spoken about specifically EC3 and his return to Impact Wrestling, that I found the booking of EC3 very, very strange and very, very odd. Now, you have to cast your mind back here, because the return of EC3 to Impact Wrestling at Slammiversary, that was the very end of the show. That was the point that was meant to wow everyone. We were surprised, man, EC3 is back, and then the pay-per-view goes off the air. It was a big moment, and arguably it was maybe even the highlight of the show. Everyone was very excited, and alongside the signings of the likes of the Good Brothers and Heath from WWE, he was considered to be one of the top big coups by Impact Wrestling over that Slammiversary weekend. One of the big surprises, and again, you have to go back to the promotion of Slammiversary that weekend. I think one of the big promotions, without actually mentioning his name, was that EC3 was going to come back. Remember those episodes of Impact where they played his old entrance music, the Trouble, Trouble, Trouble theme, and everyone was very excited and interested to see EC3 return to the company. So we then, after Slammiversary, see EC3 attack Moose. He then steals the TNA World Heavyweight Championship from Moose at Impact Emergence. And we're thinking, okay, EC3, it's a slow build, but he's getting back into the storylines and the arena, the Impact Zone there for Impact Wrestling. But that was about it. That was about it. It was just vignettes and promos with Moose, hyping the match for Bound for Glory, and the storyline with Moose heading into arguably the biggest event of the year. But that was it, and it was very, very strange for me, because the match at Bound for Glory was technically the only match that EC3's worked in his return to Impact. And as I mentioned at the top of this video, was it even a match? Because personally, when I was watching it, I mean, the evidence is there, the watch-along's there on the channel, so you can check out my immediate reactions to this. I didn't really think it was a match. And if it wasn't a match, then I suppose he technically lost, but did he even really lose? For me, now on the other side of it, and now that we can sort of, a bit of hindsight, and we can reflect on what really that undisclosed location match was, the way I look at it now, it just seems to me like that match was a vehicle to get Moose over, get Moose ready for a possible Impact World Championship run, or the very least a feud with Rich Swann, which is what he's doing now. So I found it odd, as I mentioned. I found it very odd that this new version of EC3 made only 1 or 2 appearances inside the Impact Zone in Nashville, Tennessee at Skyway Studios, and he didn't work a single match inside of an Impact ring inside the Impact Zone upon his return. As I mentioned, it was just vignettes, promos, 1 or 2 in-person appearances where he attacks Moose, and that was it. That was it. And I think back to some of the comments that EC3 was making when he first signed, or first returned. I don't even know if he signed. Because when he first returned to Impact, and he's been saying this the whole time that he's had this run with the company, he kept saying, I'm not signed. I haven't returned. I'm not with Impact. And it looks to me now, or if you try and read the tea leaves here, it looks to me that he wasn't lying. And I speculated on this a couple of months ago. You can see it here on the channel. To me, in the way that Impact was booking EC3 with his limited appearances and only promos, not having week-to-week matches on Impact Wrestling on Access TV, to me, that felt like EC3 has signed a very short and very specific deal with Impact Wrestling. He had limited appearances, and the deal factored in a couple of in-person dates, which would be when he attacked Moose on those multiple occasions, and 1 match, which was at the Bound for Glory pay-per-view with Moose. And again, it wasn't a match. And I just find it very, very curious, because it looks to me like he signed a very strange deal. As I mentioned, limited appearances, the appearance at Bound for Glory, the ability to work for other promotions during that time. There is no crossover, or there's no working relationship between Impact and Ring of Honor right now. And the more I look at it, again, I think this more is skewed towards Moose than it is to EC3. Because I think Impact wanted to bring back a former TNA World Heavyweight Champion to feud with Moose. Obviously, Moose currently holds the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. Impact wanted to add some credibility to that storyline. They wanted to get some eyeballs to that storyline, and they wanted to add in an element of the past to that storyline. And EC3 ticks all of those boxes. Former TNA World Heavyweight Champion, held specifically that version of the bout, had just left WWE, had a bit of buzz, and has credibility to his name, and it all works out. And I think it works for EC3 specifically as well, because when you look at EC3, and I think the Control Your Narrative is almost more than a gimmick at this point, because it works for EC3 because he wanted to obviously create some buzz after his WWE release, which he did by returning to Impact at the very first opportunity when the non-compete clauses expired. He released a video on YouTube, had his first post-WWE match, which was in that undisclosed location, by the way. But then the very same night, he returns at Slammiversary. At the very end of the show, people are buzzing, talking about EC3. And it also fits in with the Control Your Narrative storyline by EC3 returning to the place that he made his name. He's erasing and confronting his past of TNA in Impact Wrestling. So that all fits with this new character that EC3 has been trying to create and foster post-WWE. And as I mentioned, during this time with Impact Wrestling, he debuted with Ring of Honor. And if you look at this Ring of Honor run that he's doing right now, he's already worked a match inside of a ring for Ring of Honor on Ring of Honor TV. A regular wrestling match. And compare that to his recent run in Impact Wrestling. He returned to Impact in July, had this run with Impact that runs through July to October, and he still hasn't worked a match inside of an Impact Wrestling ring on Impact Wrestling TV. He's already done that in his second appearance with Ring of Honor. So again, it makes you wonder that this Impact deal was very, very different to this one that he has with Ring of Honor, and it obviously wasn't a full-blown, fully fledged return to the company that I guess and many people thought that it was. So what's the current status of EC3 now? Well, obviously, as I mentioned, it's currently unknown if EC3 will return to Impact and if he will continue to make appearances with the company in the future. I've stated several times before that if I try and I'm just trying to be a mind reader here, which isn't possible, by the way, but I've stated before that, in my opinion, I think the end game when it comes to EC3, I think his long-term goal is to end up in AEW. I think EC3 wants to come into AEW in a featured spot. I think he wants to rebuild his reputation. I think he wants to rebuild and build up his name once again after that disastrous WWE run that really hurt his reputation. You have to remember the reputation that EC3 had coming into NXT and WWE. This is a former two-time TNA World Heavyweight Champion, one of the best promos outside of WWE. There was a lot of build-up and a lot of reputation to EC3 that just vanished in a couple of years through that disastrous WWE run. Not so much the NXT run, but he didn't do a lot in NXT because he didn't have a lot of time. He was called up to WWE so quickly. So I think he's trying to rebuild his reputation and build up his name, and I think he's trying to do that with short-term runs in Impact and Ring of Honor, which is what he's doing now. So, as I mentioned, I'm not sure if EC3 will return to Impact now. I think he'll continue to be with Ring of Honor for a few months. Those tapings, as I mentioned, have already happened, but he'll probably be there for a couple of more tapings and a big pay-per-view when Ring of Honor does a pay-per-view. So, I couldn't give you a straight answer, to be honest, if EC3 will return to Impact or not. Obviously, right now, his opponent at Bound for Glory, Moose, looks set to be feuding with Rich Swann for the Impact World Championship. I would think the main event of Hard to Kill in January will be between Rich Swann and Moose for the Impact World Championship. Perhaps EC3 could return to confront Moose in person in January, maybe. Maybe his run with Ring of Honor will be finished by then. We'll have to wait and see. It's a very confusing situation, and I think that's the way EC3 likes it. I think EC3 likes to stoke the fires on social media. He likes to get people talking about him and get the dirt sheets writing and guessing about the future of EC3. And look, if we're doing this video, that's exactly he's achieved his goal there, hasn't he? But what I will say, and if this is the end of EC3's run with Impact Wrestling, if this was just a short-term return for a match at Bound for Glory, or an appearance at Bound for Glory, not a match, then I won't lie, I would be a little disappointed. I would be a little bit disappointed. I would have liked to have seen more during this time with Impact Wrestling with EC3, considering the history that EC3 has with the company. As I mentioned, two-time TNA World Heavyweight Champion. He made his name in Impact Wrestling, defeated the likes of Kurt Angle and Sting during his time in Impact. In kayfabe, he's the nephew of Dixie Carter. I would have liked them to address that as well. I just would have liked to have seen more. And I know we had a short period of time, but I would have liked to see more. I would have liked them to embrace his history more. I know the whole storyline was about erasing it, but I just would have liked to have seen more. I felt that they could have done more. I would have liked to have seen EC3 have more matches inside of the ring, inside of the Impact Zone. I would have liked to have seen EC3 face some of the faces he hasn't faced before in Impact and really have the old guard versus the new guard, but that didn't happen. And to return to Impact for what, 4 months, only make 2 appearances inside the Impact Zone and just do promos, and then on top of that have a cinematic match at Bound for Glory. I mean, to be honest, if I'm being super critical, I think it sucks. But you never know, EC3 could still return to Impact in the future. To me, it did feel like he was written off at Bound for Glory, certainly written off of TV in the way that he exited that match against Moose. So who knows? As I mentioned, January, I think Moose is going to be factored into Impact World Championship plans. Certainly looks like he's going to be feuding with Rich Swann. And maybe Moose wins the World Championship in January at the Hard to Kill pay-per-view. If he does, then you have a ready-made World Championship challenger in EC3 to return to confront him. So that is potential. But I also talk about, and I've mentioned this a few times in the Impact videos that we've done on the channel recently, that Impact to me really lacks that big top babyface. They don't have that real top babyface that you go, look, that's the guy in Impact, that's the guy to build the company around and just be the big star. And EC3 returning to the company felt to me like, okay, you've got him. If you can tie him down, that's the guy to build the company around. He's a name, people know him, he's got a history with the company, he can talk, he looks great. I mean, he ticks every single box. But after a couple of months, it looks like he's already working out with Ring of Honor. And as I mentioned, I wouldn't be stunned in the slightest if in 2021 we see EC3 in an AEW ring, because I do think that's his end goal. I really do. So if that is the case, and this is just his run with Impact Wrestling finished, then that is a little bit disappointing. But there are plenty of great talent still in Impact Wrestling that we can watch every Tuesday night. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on EC3 potentially being done with Impact Wrestling already? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll be sure to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys and chatting about Impact Wrestling in the comments. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button as well. Really does help us out here on YouTube, go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.